They didn't knock. They made no announcement. On orders, the royal guard raided Camilla's private estate. What did they discover within? Pieces of the crown that were never supposed to leave it. Not dust or heirlooms. Silently, permanently, someone had been getting ready to sell them. With full royal authority, the guard entered and retrieved them. Prince William landed on the lawn to complete the procedure after Camilla attempted to halt it herself. Jewelry wasn't the only thing at stake. It dealt with trust, memory, and what happens when the past is appropriated by the wrong people. Because the monarchy remained in charge that night, it retracted it. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video. It will help out a lot. At 6:47, there was a malfunction in the infantry log. Not overly dramatic, no red lights flashing, no blaring sirens. On Sergeant Nathan Corbin's screen, there was only a little line of text blinking, accompanied by the type of metadata that most people would ignore. Temp reloc QLPD 192. Only the code of an archivist who hadn't worked in the vault for more than 2 years. No signature, no accurate timestamp. In the dull fluorescent light of Windsor's legacy chamber, Nathan narrowed his eyes at his monitor. Something didn't feel right. The information unfolded like a story that didn't quite fit together as he clicked the entry, and then clicked again. The sapphire pendant is the item. Custody chain, legacy archive to interim preservation transfer, owner Her Majesty, Queen Elizabeth II. Albemarle Heritage Consultants is the destination. Authorization LE3 clearance/external referral. Notes, awaiting curation of the off-site show. Nathan was aware that the entire situation was absurd. The Queen had worn that pendant, a teardrop sapphire around by Welsh diamonds, during Prince Philip's last memorial ceremony, and he had seen it up close. It has never been loaned out, catalogued for museum exhibition, or referenced in any of the modernization memos that are currently circling Windsor like pricey confetti. He pulled up the backup logs by moving his fingers across the keyboard. A coronation brooch, a 4-strand pearl choker that had belonged to the Queen Mother, and an emerald coronet, all had the same strange design. In the last 6 weeks, all were categorized as temp relic. All of them had shipping manifests pointing toward Norfolk, were signed off with the same dead referral code, and were sent through Albemarle Heritage Consultants, the same mystery firm. Like a stopped breath, Nathan sat back in his chair as the chamber's silence closed in around him. When Elizabeth's coffin traveled through Westminster, he had been standing in this exact room. The velvet cushion containing the sovereign's orb had been carried by him. She had said, "These aren't just objects, Sergeant. They're stories. They don't belong to me. They belong to what comes after me," in a measured, private, and dryly humorous voice that he could still hear from that unofficial inspection 3 years prior. What on earth was Albemarle doing wearing her jewelry then? He pushed back from his desk and headed to case 17, where the brooch had been, his boots making a faint reverberation on the marble floor. Colored lights spilled on vacant pedestals as the morning sun began to peek through the stained glass windows far overhead. They still retained paper records, so Nathan opened the hard copy ledger and turned to section 4. 3 years ago, it had been manually logged. His jaw tensed. Signature, E2R. False alarms had never been Nathan Corbin's style, but this place was awful. Furthermore, this had little to do with public interest or preservation if the Queen's personal relics were vanishing into thin air. Under the guise of formal documentation and protocol, this was theft, and the cost was going to be borne by someone. When Nathan slid the file over Lady Caroline Whitby's antique tea table, she raised her eyebrows, something she didn't usually do. After locking the door, she stood up, seen through leaded windows onto leather-bound registers that most people had forgotten existed. They were hidden away in a forgotten reading room on the second floor of the Royal Archives. Nathan had ensured that only Caroline, her porcelain cup of Earl Grey, and 40 years of institutional memory were planned for that morning, instead of any members of the Modernization Committee. Like a detective analyzing evidence at a crime scene, she read the dossier. "Crates left Windsor 12 days apart," she whispered, using her finger to trace the shipping documents. "No press coverage, no security logs, and no customs paperwork, none that I can find. The trail goes cold at Sandringham." Caroline laughed bitterly. "You realize what you're suggesting here?" Nathan tapped the Albemarle transfer code and said, "I'm stating facts, not making any suggestions. That's a ghost authorization. We retired it when Elizabeth died. Someone reactivated it without proper clearance." Her look was unreadable as she sat back. "You think Camilla's moving pieces privately?" "I think Camilla's estate is receiving royal jewelry that was never meant to leave this castle. Like a taut cable, The quiet drew them apart. Then Caroline took a little black leather folder out of a locked drawer. "There's someone you need to meet." A business card bearing the name of Inspector Rule Chudori of the Metropolitan Police Heritage Unit was enclosed. It had no royal crest. Softly, "Tell him I sent you," she murmured. "And Nathan, be careful. This is exactly the kind of problem that powerful people prefer stays buried." Nathan and Inspector Rule Chudori met at Scotland Yard's side entrance. Just a dark wool coat and the kind of keen eyes that didn't miss anything. No uniform, no obvious badge. "Lady Whitby said you had concerns. I've got missing inventory, falsified shipping records, and a consultancy that doesn't exist on any approved vendor list." As someone who had previously seen this pattern, Chudori studied the printed manifests intently. "These codes are familiar. We investigated something similar 2 years back. Private artifacts from Balmoral turning up in Geneva auction houses. No charges were ever filed. Quiet retractions all around the palace discouraged further inquiry." Nathan's tone became stern. "Well, this time we don't get discouraged." For the following hour, they compared off-site shipping data with Windsor clearance codes. After being conducted by civilian contractors via the backloading docks, crates bearing the label household memorabilia were redirected under Norfolk estate clearances, Camilla's private property that was recorded independently of Crown lands. Every approval form included the same name, L.R. Meredith, who was referred to as a historic logistics expert with experience working for private collectors in Dubai and Monaco. Nathan questioned, "Do I have grounds for action?" "You've got enough for a review warrant," Chudori said. "But if this becomes political, you'll be ordered to stand down before the paperwork's even filed." Tucking the evidence folder into his coat, Nathan got to his feet. "Then I'll brief the Crown before it gets political." He had more than paperwork when he left Scotland Yard. He was certain that this was not a hallucination. A methodical process was underway to remove the Queen's personal belongings from Windsor and transfer them into private ownership, and they would permanently disappear into the global art market if nothing was done quickly. It didn't appear that clandestine operations were authorized in the wood-paneled conference room at Clarence House. There were no tactical displays or digital screens, only a grandfather clock that had been keeping time for centuries due to royal decrees, a bronze bust of King George V, 6th, and an ancient table. After taking off his reading spectacles, Colonel James Stretton carefully set them on the leather blot. His hands were solid, his shoulders squared, his military bearing unwavering, but there was a new gravity in his voice. "You're absolutely certain about the provenance?" Nathan gave a nod. "The pendant, coronet, and brooch were all logged under Queen Elizabeth's personal custody. None were cleared for transfer, none appear on the rotation registry. I verified against the original handwritten ledgers signed by the Queen herself." Stretton looked down at the evidence folder again. "And you believe they're at the Norfolk estate?" "They were shipped under false documentation, marked as household inventory by a contractor with a history in black market auctions." The colonel's voice sank. "Does His Majesty know?" "Not yet, sir." A soft knock interrupted them. The steward barely cracked the door before standing back as Prince William entered the room. He didn't respond immediately, simply peered at the folder, then at Stretton, then lastly at Nathan with an expression that was both intrigued and anxious. "Sergeant Corbin," he said steadily, "I'm told you have something urgent." Nathan stood and offered the evidence folder. William didn't take it right away. Instead, he asked a simple question that cut straight to the heart of everything. "How long have you been assigned to the Legacy Chamber?" 7 years, sir. Her Majesty appointed me personally. And in your professional opinion, what we're looking at here is theft." Nathan met his stare without flinching. "Sir, I believe it's worse than theft. It's erasure." William nodded once, then took the folder and read through it meticulously, page by page. No hurrying. When he finally closed it, the temperature in the room seemed to drop. "Colonel," he asked, "how quickly could we assemble a discreet retrieval team?" Stretton answered promptly. 12 hours if we keep it unofficial, 10 personnel, plain clothes, 3 with heritage unit clearance, the rest ceremonial guards repurposed for logistics." William's jaw set with silent determination. "No uniforms, no publicity, no scandal. We recover what's missing, document everything, and handle this internally." He turned to Nathan. "You'll lead identification. This is your discovery. You see it through." As William proceeded toward the door, he hesitated and looked back. "This isn't just about recovering stolen property," he stated. "It's about trust. If we lose that, we lose everything that actually matters." The door closed behind him, leaving Nathan with the weight of what was about to happen. Colonel Stretton tapped the desk once with his knuckles. "You heard him, Sergeant. You're not on watch duty anymore. You're on a mission." Nathan retrieved the evidence folder, knowing that the next time he stepped into this room, His career might be finished, but at least the crown's legacy wouldn't disappear without a battle. The aircraft hangar at Northolt looked nondescript from the outside, just another weathered facility concealed between antiquated radar equipment and Ministry of Defense transport vehicles. But that bleak Tuesday morning, it became the staging point for the most sensitive royal operation in decades. Inside, under harsh overhead lights, a folding table had been positioned between two sand-colored Land Rovers. On it rested a small bag with Privy Council seals, a document tube containing the retrieval warrant, and 6 black folders, each marked with call signs and operational parameters. Colonel Stretton stood at the head of the table, accompanied by 2 officers from the Metropolitan Police Heritage Unit. No insignia showing, no official titles used, just silent awareness about what was to be done. Nathan arrived last, wearing civilian clothing over tactical gear, carrying the evidence folder that had triggered everything. Around him, royal guards, reassigned from ceremonial duties, adjusted their dark jackets and checked their equipment with professional serenity. Stretton didn't spend time on speeches. Each of you has been briefed individually. You are not enforcement officers today. You are recovery specialists. This is not a criminal investigation. It's an internal correction executed under Crown authority. He laid his hand on the sealed warrant. You're acting on direct orders from the Prince of Wales under sovereign prerogative. No media, no leaks, no mistakes. The team nodded in unison. Nathan recognized Corporal Hamzadar from their Afghanistan deployment. They exchanged a quick shoulder clasp, the kind of non-verbal communication that came from shared experience under strain. Inspector Chowdhury finished syncing the body cameras with the secure recording system in the command vehicle. Continuous documentation, he muttered to himself. If this goes sideways, we'll need clear evidence of proper procedure. How sideways could it go? One of the guards inquired. Chowdhury looked up with gloomy humor. When you catch someone this powerful in the middle of systematic theft, they either fold completely or fight back with everything they've got. Nathan busied himself sorting the sealed evidence bins in the rear of his assigned Land Rover. He'd been in tactical scenarios before, urban patrols in Helmand, checkpoint operations, even aggressive crowd control, but this seemed different. They weren't entering hostile territory. They were walking into the private estate of the Queen Consort to reclaim stolen memories, jewels that had witnessed christenings and state broadcasts, coronations and private family moments, pieces that held the tangible fingerprints of a 70-year reign, now sitting unjustly beneath someone else's roof. One of the communications officers handed Nathan a covert earpiece. Frequency check. Clear reception, he said. Estate access codes unchanged since the Queen's final inspection. To get attention, Stretton held up his hand. Move out. 3 Land Rovers and 1 unmarked civilian car made up the convoy that pulled out of the hangar in formation. No lights for emergencies. No more radio conversation than is necessary for coordination. Just the steady, deliberate march of individuals who knew that history could not be bought back once it was lost, and they were running out of time to stop it. Camilla's Norfolk home resembled something from the pages of Country Life magazine, Ivy. Ivy that had been manicured to look wild, but wasn't covered limestone walls, wrought iron gates draped with climbing roses, and immaculate hedges. Instead of yelling about ancient money, it murmured it with a kind of studied English elegance. Nathan, however, wasn't taking in the scenery. He was looking at sightlines, documenting the security cameras, and noticing that the Western Service Road was still unguarded, just as the drawings had said. Originally a part of the Queen's larger Sandringham properties, Camilla made extensive additions to the estate, including new wings, subterranean storage spaces, and what the building permits called climate-controlled preservation galleries. It was a private retreat. Officially, informally, it had taken on a completely other form. The convoy broke up as planned. Together with the cops from the Heritage section, Inspector Chowdhury's team made their way to the main door. Since the old corridor codes would still be functional, Nathan's gang set up shop close to the staff entrance. On the bridle walk, the 3rd car assumed overwatch position in preparation for the transportation of the evidence. The front bell was rung by Chowdhury at exactly 6:02 p.m. In response, an elderly waiter with a gray waistcoat and a startled look was obviously unprepared for dignitaries. Chowdhury quietly and authoritatively produced the sealed warrant. This is a heritage protection action under royal prerogative. We're here to recover Crown-classified artifacts currently held in unauthorized custody. The man appeared truly perplexed. Her Majesty isn't in residence. That's not required, Chowdhury said coolly in response. But cooperation would be appreciated. Nathan went to the service door in the meantime, and entered the previous code, 1952, the year Elizabeth became queen. Without hesitation, The electronic lock clicked green. The smell of cold stone and lemon oil filled the back hallway. Two logistics experts with museum-quality shipping containers trailed behind Nathan and Corporal Da. The employees they came across appeared more perplexed than hostile. It was obvious that they had not been ready for this. Near the east corridor, a young curator who had just graduated from college attempted to obstruct their way. "You can't just walk in here. These are the Queen Consort's private collections." Nathan's tone did not change. "They're crown artifacts under sovereign protection. Please step aside." Even if his hands trembled a little, the young man complied. They arrived at the former carriage house of the estate, which has been transformed into a climate-controlled exhibition area. The walls were lined with brass vault doors, each with a unique placard. Nathan compared his documentation with the registry numbers. Gallery 3, Royal Heritage Collection, was the name of one vault. He gave Dav a look. "This is it. Any alarms?" "We're about to find out." The same code sequence was entered by Nathan. With a quiet mechanical whir, the heavy door opened, showing rows of museum-caliber display cases set up like a private exhibition, along with LED lamps. In the middle, under a glass dome, was the Queen's sapphire pendant, which was perfectly illuminated. From a revolving display platform, her crowning brooch shone. Nathan recognized that this was a private museum, where the emerald coronet was set up like a crown treasure. He breathed out slowly. This was not a place to preserve history. They were getting it ready to be sold. It wasn't only the climate control that made the vault feel cooler than the hallway outside. Nathan cautiously crossed the barrier, observing the entirety of Camilla's creation. It wasn't storage. Professional lighting, museum-quality displays, and beautifully calligraphed handwritten placards were all part of the presentation. Not even the royal collection had such a refined appearance. However, it was not the intricate arrangement that tightened his chest. It was witnessing the Queen's own jewelry on exhibit like goods. Under its glass dome, the sapphire pendant was positioned in the center, just as he remembered it from that winter morning when Elizabeth wore it to Princess Anne's memorial speech. He had seen how the pendant caught the light coming through Westminster's windows and had adjusted her mourning veil that day. The nonchalant rebranding made him nauseous. Now it sat with a small engraved placard. Mid-20th century sapphire and diamond pendant, private collection. The emerald coronet, last seen in a portrait taken at a private Commonwealth banquet, was in another case to his right. The South African diamonds in the coronation brooch, a gift from King George V/6 that had never left Elizabeth's personal possession, were to his left. All of them were stolen, reframed and relabeled. Da whistled low behind him. "Jesus, it's like robbing a memory." To take pictures of each piece through the glass, Nathan got down on his knees. If it came to that, the body camera's recorded inventory numbers and timestamps would be admissible in court. The silence of the vault was broken by a voice. "That's quite far enough." A man wearing a pricey blue suit walked in with a leather portfolio, silver cufflinks, and the assured demeanor that came from dealing with high-value transactions. His mouth was clenched in corporate resolve. "L.R. Meredith," he said sharply, "Heritage Preservation Specialist. These items are under professional archival review. You're interfering with a legitimate cultural preservation process." Nathan carefully stood up and looked him in the eye. "Under whose authority?" "Her Majesty, the Queen Consort." Meredith produced a letter with the official crest of Camilla on it. Nathan chose not to examine it. Rather, he retrieved the retrieval warrant, a crown decree signed by the Privy Council and approved by the Prince of Wales, by reaching into his jacket. "These items are under sovereign protection, not private curation." Meredith's poise wavered. "This isn't a courtroom, Sergeant." "No," said Nathan, taking a step forward. "But it's about to become evidence in one." Meredith looked toward the hallway, obviously weighing her options for calling for help or the police. Nathan didn't wait for him to make up his mind. The logistics crew was his next stop. Document everything. Photograph each case. Begin transfer to secure containers. No delays. While the others unlocked their temperature-controlled transport cases, museum-standard containers made to protect valuable objects throughout transfer, Duff made his way to the coronet display. Nathan sensed pressure growing somewhere above them, but the activity in the vault remained professional. Less than 20 minutes had passed since they had entered the estate, and they had yet to see Camilla. He glanced at the sapphire pendant again. The stone appeared to retain collected starlight, even in artificial illumination. He recalled Elizabeth stating that older diamonds understood the meaning of silence, which helped her feel less alone during lengthy official travels overseas. It now sat in enforced silence, on display for purchasers who would never realize its actual worth. If he could avoid it, no. Her entrance was preceded by the steady click of heels on polished stone. Nathan recognized the sound without turning around. With two assistants at her sides, Camilla made her way into the gallery with a controlled precision that suggested barely repressed rage. Her gloves were still on, her coat was dark navy, and she exuded the power of someone used to having her word be final. With the face of a general evaluating war damage, she looked about at the open cases, the documentation tools, the shipping containers. She stated, "This is private property," in a voice as acerbic as winter air. "You have no legal right to be here." Nathan stood up straight but did not retreat. "Mom, this is a Crown-authorized recovery under sovereign directive." She squinted. "That pendant was gifted to me personally, as were several of these pieces. What you're doing is institutional overreach, an embarrassment to the monarchy itself." Nathan looked her in the eye. "The monarchy embarrasses itself when it forgets what it's supposed to protect." "You're a guard," she said coldly in response. "You don't determine policy." "No, Mom, but I swore an oath to the crown and to the legacy of the queen who entrusted these items to my protection." Camilla's calmness wavered a bit, like stones dropped into still water. The words, "That queen is dead," landed in the vault. Nathan drew in his breath. That doesn't mean her intentions died with her. One of Camilla's assistants came up and spoke in her ear hurriedly. "Mom, perhaps we should allow them to conclude. This will attract unwanted attention." With a gaze that could freeze mercury, Camilla hushed him. She turned back to Nathan and said, "No, not yet." Her voice fell dangerously silent. "You think I don't understand what this really is? A power play disguised as duty. You want to make a spectacle, drag this into public view. We've done the opposite," Nathan said calmly in response. "No press, no uniforms, no announcements. We came quietly because someone had to come." She clenched her jaw. "These pieces sat untouched for years, gathering dust in archive rooms nobody visits. You think hiding them behind Windsor's walls honors their significance?" Nathan remarked. "They're not decorative objects. They're history, and they don't belong locked away in a private basement." As Camilla approached, the vault appeared to rapidly contract around their encounter. "You realize this destroys your career?" Nathan didn't flinch. "My career was never what I was protecting." There was no humor in her laughter. A noble sentiment. Totally unfeasible, yet admirable. Then she looked at her employees. "Seal this room immediately. Nothing else leaves until I've spoken directly to His Majesty." The entrance to the vault was blocked by two estate workers. Without hesitation, Nathan reached for his earpiece. "Control, requesting immediate clearance authority." A pause followed by a composed answer. "Inbound. ETA 8 minutes." As Camilla took in what she had just heard, her demeanor changed. "Who exactly did you just contact?" Without flinching, Nathan met her gaze. "Someone who remembers what the crown actually means." Like impending thunder, the faraway sound of rotor blades drifted across the Norfolk countryside. Before anybody else noticed the noise, Camilla turned in its direction, her shoulders tensing as she recognized instinctively that something was beyond of her control. Even though the drab, formal, unmarked helicopter lacked any royal emblems, it somehow exuded royal power. As the plane landed in the clearing outside the formal gardens, the wind blew across the well-kept lawn outside the estate's windows. No escort, no ceremony, just the silent efficiency of power that made no noise. Following Prince William, who was dressed in a black coat, were two lawyers with sealed portfolios. He approached the estate's entrance with the deliberate gait of someone who has already made up their mind how this would all turn out. Camilla waited in the vault corridor. Although Nathan and his group had halted their transfer efforts, they had not backed down. The brooch, coronet, and pendant were already fastened in shipping containers. The remaining ones were tagged and recorded, prepared for prompt removal. Without saying anything, William went into the vault and looked about at the ornate display cases, the expert lighting, and the individuals holding their breath. Sergeant Corbin, with a straight back, Nathan took a step forward. "Sir, status report. All items located and verified, sir. No damage detected. Ready for transport." After giving a nod, William spoke to the lawyer standing next to him. "Present the decree." When the younger man opened his portfolio, he took out an official paper that was sealed by the sovereign. Under Article 8 of the Crown Legacy Protection Act, all personal effects of Her late Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, unless expressly transferred by witness testament, remain under perpetual Crown custody. Effective immediately, all items removed from Windsor Castle are to be returned to royal protection. This directive carries the full authority of the sovereign and the express command of the Prince of Wales. The vault was as quiet as rising water. Without saying anything, Camilla gazed at William. William looked at her calmly and decisively. "These aren't collectibles, Mom. They're not investments or diplomatic gifts. They are memory made tangible. My grandmother's, my father's, this nation's. When Camilla did speak, it was hardly controlled. You think this humiliates me? You think I'll quietly accept this intervention? It's already concluded, was William's straightforward response. She took a step forward, her poise finally evaporating. You believe a vault full of jewelry is what makes the monarchy sacred. It's not precious stones that matter. It's the people who wear them. With unwavering conviction, he responded. Then honor the ones who came before us, without raising his voice. Neither of them said anything for a long time. Only the distant sound of helicopter rotors dying down. At last, Camilla turned stiffly dignifiedly to her staff. Let them finish. This is a capitulation under the pretense of cooperation. No apology, no acknowledgement of mistake. William spoke directly to Nathan. Secure everything and return it to Windsor before dawn. Issue a sealed report. This operation remains classified indefinitely. The lawyer stopped next to Nathan as he was about to depart. Thank you, he muttered. You just prevented history from disappearing forever. Nathan remained silent. Already, his gaze was returning to the shipment containers. Work remained to be done. When the caravan rolled back through Windsor's old gates, the sun had not yet set. There was little fuss when the Land Rovers moved. With their priceless goods safely stored in museum-quality containers, their windows grew darker. There was no waiting press in the courtyard. They returned without a ceremony. Only one groundskeeper, maybe aware of the importance of their burden without knowing what it was, stopped his early morning chores to observe them go by. Nathan insisted on being the one to carry the last container. He declined the logistics team's help because he felt it was crucial to finish this alone, not because the situation was complicated. He strolled past glass exhibits containing centuries' worth of royal history, through the silent vault wing, and down the marble corridor. He arrived in the legacy chamber just as the stained glass windows far above were illuminated by the first rays of dawn. Like the shadow of memory itself, the impression of the sapphire pendant's resting place was still visible in case 17, a small dip in the silk cushion. With firm hands, Nathan lifted the pendant back into position and opened the cargo container. As like it had never been gone, it settled flawlessly. As he slid the lock, the morning light spilling through the colored glass reached the case, shattering the blue fire of the sapphire into shards of gold on the walls of the chamber. For a moment he remained there, recalling the voice of Elizabeth during one of those official inspections years before. He had assumed it was merely talk when she had picked up this exact jewelry and said absently, "Not everything precious needs to be seen to be valued." He now saw what she had meant, holding the recovery warrant in one pocket and an unknown future in the other. Some items weren't intended for sale or display. They were supposed to be protected. Then came the emerald coronet. Next, the brooch. Every item was put back where it belonged, following the original inventory, verified, photographed, and catalogued. All of the stolen artifacts were home by the time the automatic lighting went down at 7 o'clock. Though there were no headlines in the morning papers, word spread quietly amongst those who knew the difference between news and truth in Windsor's hallways, as these things always did. The footman gave a nod. Subtle acknowledgments were given by curators. It was mentioned simply by one of the younger guards outside the legacy chamber. "Good to have it back, sir." At his station, Nathan discovered an envelope waiting. Cream paper with a single line in precise handwriting and no official seal. Duty done. The legacy has been protected. Well, he tidied up his outfit and went back to his duty outside the chamber after putting it in the desk drawer next to his Afghanistan service medal. Eventually, there would be repercussions, including inquiries from oversight committees, and perhaps attempts to paint his actions as politically motivated or overbearing. However, that didn't alter the important things. Sergeant Nathan Corbin was still keeping watch over what was unable to defend itself, and the memory of the crown was safe. He had discovered that not all legacies were inherited. They had to be battled for.